Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Bob LaLiberte, Principal Analyst for the Cube Research, and welcome to this Analyst Angle where we're talking about networking, we're talking about retail, and we're doing it with Lawrence Huang, SVP GM of Network Platform and Wireless of Cisco. Lawrence, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to see you again, Bob. Glad you got back from NRF and yeah, love being on the show.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned NRF. It was great to be there. It was great to see all the activity that was going on. And what some of the big takeaways for me were certainly that the network is foundational to these retail organizations modernizing and becoming the foundation for AI, for security, and obviously a lot of those real-time customer experiences. And that's something that you know quite a bit about as well. So why don't we get started? It's great. You oversee both network platform and wireless at Cisco, right? That's a really critical intersection for retail. From your perspective, what's fundamentally changed about what retailers expect from their networks compared to maybe 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's no surprise that retail really has gone through quite the digital transformation over the past few years. I think the network infrastructure, wireless, it used to be, hey, is the thing up? Can I connect to it? But really, the network infrastructure has really become, to your point, the foundational, in some ways, the digital operating system of the store. Everything from making sure that, the physical security cameras can capture what they need to for, store safety, to be able to process point of sale, to supporting, IoT sensors that are growing exponentially, to be able to support use cases that really came up over the past few years, such as curbside pickup and yeah, unique customer engagements. So that store infrastructure has become more foundational than ever, and it really requires a lot more than just basic connectivity. Is really focused on the outcomes that retailers need to deliver with their infrastructure for their stores.
Yeah, I really like that comment you made about outcomes, right? And that was something I think that was another takeaway from the event, that it's not necessarily a technology show, even though there's a lot of technology there. It's really about the outcomes. And so I'm wondering if you could walk us through how Cisco's helping retailers take advantage of that maybe multiplier effect of the technology, and how the networking infrastructure can be used to be a business enabling platform.
Yeah, I think, to that point, the network, we believe that it should evolve to become focused not just on individual point products, but really on that idea of, more things connected together that's integrated deeply is a foundation for a much stronger, outcome or a capability across the network platform itself. And so for us, like when I think about retailers, like what are they doing with this infrastructure? The network has really become an extension and it's a sensor in many ways here. A good example of this is, one of our customers, they're a retailer in the Nordics. And one of the things that they wanted to do is to really leverage the network infrastructure as a foundation and layer on with rich analytics, video analytics, and computer vision technology in this case, to be able to understand how can they optimize stores. And as an example, they had a flagship store that they opened and they didn't see the type of business results that they were expecting. And when they paired, their infrastructure with our smart cameras and with a third-party ISV of ours, they were able to develop analytics to understand that actually the makeup of the people who were coming to the store, it wasn't the typical 80-20 split between women and men. It was actually 50-50 for this new flagship store. So they were able to adjust their inventory and ultimately deliver higher return on investment. That's a type of outcome that the infrastructure, when you extend it to this idea of being from point products to a platform to extending it into a platform that's a sensor for the store, it becomes so much more powerful here.
Yeah, I love that example, and it really shows that it's not just about connectivity for the network, right? The metrics that retailers are now using and gathering from the network are really, varied, I guess, right, across customer experience, right? There's associate productivity, shrink reduction, operational efficiency. What types of things are you seeing organizations saying, hey, now that we've got this foundation in place, we can now look at these metrics to help us optimize our business?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that it's, there's no one size fits all. And every retailer, every company, they think of themselves as unique. And it's true to a certain extent. but there are commonalities, right? I think for a big box retailer, they're thinking about, how do I operate at scale? And the number of, devices coming into their stores, it's evolving in such a way that it's almost becoming, in some ways, a mini data center, if you will. Then you think about, specialty stores where they are trying to deliver a unique customer experience that is actually differentiated from, big box vanilla stores. And then you get into like the quick serve retail. This is about transaction speed and uptime, and then doing this over and over again as consistently as possible. So yes, revenue matters for each of these stores, in-store performance, shrinkage reduction, all those things matter, but there's also unique characteristics depending on the type of retailer we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And the great part is, as Cisco being as large and broad as you are, you've got the ability to provide solutions for the small retail up through the big box stores and everything in between as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we've talked a lot about some of the use cases that we're seeing at the retail edge and what's happening there. We know AI is moving rapidly into these retail stores, everything going on, loss prevention, computer vision that you had mentioned and so forth, things of that. Um, how's Cisco evolving its wired and wireless platforms to support these AI-driven use cases at scale?
Yeah, I mean, recently at Cisco Live, we talked about how we really are building for the AI era. And what does that mean for Cisco? It means that for the network foundation, it really is, making sure that we continue to drive operational simplicity, increasingly powered by agentic ops capabilities. For us, we also believe that security has to be core foundation. And what we're doing here is, infusing security deeply into our network infrastructure. And then also just the fact of how quickly things are changing. The reality is that for many retailers, when they're making investments in network infrastructure, they're not just deploying it for a single year, but they're thinking about a multi-year investment. So how do we make sure that our hardware is built, to scale over the next few years as AI continues to evolve, as more inference use cases push further down, to the edge here.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the fact that security has become such an important part, right? It's hard to talk about connectivity without it being secure connectivity, especially in the retail when you think about what's going on, the transactions over wireless, the point of sale systems, et cetera, all the cameras and so forth that are deployed. And I know you've been on, you being Cisco, have been on, you know, a real strong push over the last 15 months or so with G2 talking about this whole loosely coupled, tightly integrated solutions, and you're fusing security into the network. I wonder if you could expand on that and talk about some of the innovations that have come out recently to reinforce those secure connectivity for the retailers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think even starting with the hardware, many of the conversations we have isn't just about the hardware itself. The hardware is the foundation, the silicon that we use to build these systems ultimately are delivering, the outcomes that we've been talking about. But how do we make sure that over the next few years, as security becomes ever more top of mind, that our devices are, post quantum compute ready? That's something where, when I talk to some customers, depending on the segment or vertical, and they're like, yes, we need your help here. Others are, they're not thinking about it, but we know it's coming. And then when you go beyond the hardware, especially in, retail examples where you have not just a single site usually, but hundreds of thousands of locations, how do you do things at scale? And throughout the life cycle of, infrastructure, we know the problems usually aren't day one. It's usually day 90, day 300. And so a lot of this becomes like, hey, when things like security vulnerabilities come into play, how do you make sure that, retailers can actually address these security vulnerabilities as expeditiously as possible? But we also know that, not every retailer can do so as quickly as they want to or need to. And so how do you build capabilities like Cisco Live Protect, where you can apply compensating controls, to help give our retailer customers and others more time to be able to mitigate against these security vulnerabilities? These are just a couple examples how we've been, infusing that security deeply into the network infrastructure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and certainly the ability for like Live Protect to be able to isolate the network or isolate the devices on the network and so forth in real time is certainly going to be helpful. Um, one of the other things I wanted to touch on with you is obviously we've talked a lot about so far about how retail is changing, and it seems like it's pretty much in a constant flux where there's all sorts of, as you mentioned, the new store formats, and then maybe having to very quickly change that store format. There's different fulfillment models. Obviously, we've talked about some of the security threats, and obviously there's a lot of AI-driven innovation happening right now. So I'm wondering if you could touch upon how you're designing the network and the wireless platform so that retailers have a lot of flexibility long term and aren't locked into any short term technology decisions.
Yeah, great question. So with Wi-Fi 7, one of the things that we've been doing, it's continuing what you've seen in the past, but really turbocharging it. It's really converging more capabilities, more radios into the same piece of hardware to serve multiple use cases. And so as an example of this means, embedding capabilities like ultra wideband. So that way, for retailers who want to unlock, really precise sub-meter, asset tracking or indoor wayfinding, these are things that are much easier to do when you embed these capabilities into the devices along with the right software. It also means for, retailers that have not just the consumer facing side of the experience, but also the back of house, integrating our ultra reliable wireless backhaul technology into some of our access points. And what this allows is a lot more determinism, lower latency, jitter for a lot of use cases that require this, especially around robotics, if that are increasingly being deployed in these type of environments here. And then the other piece to it is on the software side. How do we start incorporating more of the Cisco Spaces capabilities so that way it's not just a separate thing that you have to commercially transact, but it's included as part of your foundation for your network license itself, so that you can start unlocking a lot more use cases tied to things like understanding the physical asset itself of the infrastructure, not just the digital world. And then maybe the last piece I'll highlight here is, we've also been on this journey. It goes beyond wireless, but wireless is usually the first to blame of how we actually can integrate ThousandEyes much more deeply into the network stack, so that there's always on synthetic testing, always on these ambient agents that can really understand and continue to monitor an ever-changing dynamic environment, and then layering out with the rich intelligence and insights to tell you what you actually should do, or even automate that on your behalf here.
No, absolutely. And I have to say, I'm shocked that people blame the network when there's a problem.
I'm shocked. Totally.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Every day, right? So that's great to hear about what you're doing there. If I wanted to, maybe I know you have a lot of people coming in through your executive briefing center and so forth. When you've got CIOs coming in, what architectural principles should they prioritize in order for them to stay competitive? If we put it over like the next 3 to 5 years, say, what advice can you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's like we said this earlier, but it's not just about, individual best of breed products, but it's how it all comes together from a platform centric viewpoint. And does that platform allow you to not only serve your immediate needs, but allow you the flexibility to innovate on top of in the future, both from unlocking new use cases to be able to connecting, new ecosystem partners, ISV partners that you have, to be able to, aggregate, more of the data and telemetry that you need to really understand the context and insights of your locations. And then quite frankly, I think a big part of it is making sure that you continue to think about, security as top of mind. It's not just an afterthought. It has to be the foundation where you're building your next generation, store experience out of.
Oh, I think that makes a lot of sense. We're closing in on the end of our time here, so I wanted to ask you, give you an opportunity looking forward, any piece of advice you would give retail leaders who are thinking about modernizing their networks right now, and what you would want them to focus on to make sure they're ready for this AI-driven retail experience that's coming so quickly.
Yeah, look, I think none of us can predict how fast or what's coming exactly next with AI age that we're in. But what is true is, building on a foundation that provides flexibility. I think that's going to be the key to be able to adapt, because I think that even the things that we knew of in January 2025, it already looks very different in January 2026 here. So I think that, the truism is, it's change is coming, continues to come. It's going to be very rapid. So make sure that your foundation is adaptable, to that change here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially when you think about all the agentic AI that's coming out and the need for those agents to be able to talk to back office ERP, to the front office, right, to the POS devices, the handhelds, et cetera, all across the entire infrastructure, is really going to need that flexibility and that ability for the network to step up and deliver where it's needed for both the back end and on the front end. So great advice. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're getting towards the end of our time here. So in one kind of closing, looking out at the future, if there's one piece of advice you'd give to these retail leaders who are modernizing their networks, what should they focus on to make sure they're ready for that AI-driven retail experience?
Yeah, we already talked about the goal for having a platform that's flexible, that's future proof. That's the foundation. But I also think that in this world where AI agents, become much more prolific, these digital partners of yours, I encourage our customers to think about the vendors, the partners that they work with. Are they thinking through in depth the way that we're building these systems, not only for efficacy, because we know that agentic systems, it's not just about running one task, but stringing along multiple and getting to the output, the outcome that you want. It's not just about, getting to, 95% accuracy, but building that system in such a way that can get you to that output that you want. But doing so in a way that's secure, that's safe. These are things that actually are going to matter much more as we head into this year and beyond here.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a lot for these organizations to think about and make sure they're paying attention to as they move forward and modernize their network. So that's going to be it for this Analyst Angle. Lawrence, thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Bob. It was great to be here.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everyone who's watching as well. Thank you so much for being here, learning about how Cisco is enabling secure, intelligent, and scalable retail networks. For more information on what Lawrence was talking about today, please check out the Cisco website for more information. Thanks very much. I'm Bob LaLiberte from the Cube Research. We'll see you next time.